Interesting article we were talking about on Friday last week in Yahoo Sports, and in the title, Americans favor, according to a poll, Americans favor athletes speaking out, just not on the field. And the author of that article joins us here on the Sportsline, Jay Busbee of Yahoo Sports. Hey, Jay, how are you?
I'm doing well. How y'all doing?
We're good.
Doing good, Jay.
We're good. And we definitely do want to dive into this topic, but you were also covering a little golf tournament up in New York over the weekend. Pretty amazing stuff there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was easy enough to forget that the golf tournament was even happening, what with football week 2 and college football coming back and all that. But, yeah, it was something exceptional seeing Bryson DeChambeau and the way that he rolled over the rest of the field. I mean, this could be one of the weekends that we look back on 10 years from now and say that's the point where golf changed.
I think one of the headlines in the local paper here was Brute Bryson. He really was a brute hitting the golf ball. I saw where he averaged off the tee 325 yards. That's mauling the golf ball.
Yeah, I mean, he was a monster. He just absolutely is. He does not look like your kind of scrawny, khaki-wearing, typical country club golfer. He's just a big monster of a dude who could go and just knock down redwoods with that swing. So it was fascinating to see somebody actually try that, and then even more so pull it off.
You know, the most important or the most amazing thing for me was his touch, because you look at the way he addresses the ball, even the way he putts. I mean, it looks very muscle bound, right? His arms are straight out. There's no flex in his elbows. You know, it seems very stiff and, you know, like I said, kind of muscle bound. But I mean, the guy's got amazing touch as well. And to see him do what he did, I know kind of, you know, threw a lot of golf purists kind of on their ears.
Yeah, I mean, you know, anybody who's played golf knows if you get up there and you tee it up as high as he does and you swing as hard as he does, there's about a 1% chance that it's going to go in the direction even remotely that you want it to go in. It's more likely going to splay off somewhere on the side and, you know, hit somebody in the back of the head or something like that. But he's able to do that. He's got such precise control. And that's the thing. As you said, a lot of golf purists laughed at him, but he's the one laughing now. I mean, all of his goofiness and all of his scientific explanations, they actually appear to have worked. So that's a fascinating thing to see unfold.
Jay, were you kind of shocked that he just took command yesterday and wound up winning by 6 shots?
Yes and no. In the moment I was, but looking back more on it, I mean, there was just really, he was able to steady himself in a way that nobody else was. And he was able to keep it compartmentalized where he would go from hole to hole. He had almost no bogeys. He had a game plan. I mean, he game plans everything. He obviously had a game plan for how to attack each hole, and he executed on that in a way that you don't usually see to that degree of precision in golf. So I was kind of surprised that nobody else made a run, but you know, in retrospect, it seemed like this was his to claim all along.
You know, and we're talking with Jay Busbee of Yahoo Sports here on the Sportsline. You know, the amazing thing, Jay, is for folks who don't really follow golf all that closely, certainly got a little bit of a snapshot of, you know, what he is. I mean, you know, the science, a little bit of eccentricity there with you know, with Bryson. But as you're kind of watching this whole thing develop, some of the, you know, the other stuff, and, you know, just kind of reading, you know, your column about it afterwards, that, you know, folks who might not know golf and follow it super closely, you know, this is a little bit of a strange dude, huh?
He's weird as hell. I mean, let's just he's just, you know, strange doesn't even begin to cover it. And it's great because I think that golf, among all sports, needs to have more characters like this. You know, needs to have more people, more personalities that you can pull for. It's very, very tough to separate one golfer from another. As much as I love watching Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth and all these guys, they're all kind of the same sort of mold. That's why people are drawn to Phil Mickelson so much, because he's so much like they are. He's a lot more laid back. He gets himself into trouble on the golf course and gets himself back out again. People love Tiger because he won so much, but people love Phil because he kind of reminded them of themselves. So that's the kind of thing where if we can have somebody that's just distinctive and draws a reaction, either positive or negative, that's so much better for the golf fandom.
Jay, is this going to heat up the argument about the equipment and trying to limit the distance that golfers can hit the golf ball now?
Yes, absolutely it is. It's they're going to try their best to figure out ways to bring the range back to cut down on the distance and figure ways, because if you can't extend the courses any further, I mean that's certainly we're at the limits of that. But yeah, it's definitely at a point where something needs to be done, or they're just going to overpower all these old courses.
Well, the crazy part about it, though, with him is, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily about the equipment, although I know he, kind of favors all the clubs being of the same length, and that was kind of interesting in and of itself. But with him, is it the equipment or just the fact that he's so jacked up and he's just going out there and killing the ball in a way none of us can because we're not willing to put in the work?
Yeah, it's a little of both, but then obviously people can follow in his footsteps and certainly, follow some sort of similar regimen and have the same experience with the same equipment. So, yeah, I mean, that's where we're at right now.
He was out on the range hitting balls. They had to leave the lights on for him late. He was working on wedges and stuff like that. I mean, he puts time and effort into it and drinks all those protein shakes, and he gets himself ready to play. You got to give him credit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he puts in the work, that's for sure.
Jay Busbee of Yahoo Sports joining us here on the Sportsline. And as much as I'd love to continue talking golf, we originally reached out because we wanted to talk about this poll. Americans favor athletes speaking out, just not on the field. And, a little background, we're down here in Lynchburg. It's a pretty conservative place in the middle of Virginia. And, one of the things when Dennis and I started doing this show just a month and a half ago, we talked about, with all the political unrest and, all the statements that are looking to be made, we're doing a show, an afternoon drive as people get off of work and head home. And, is this something they really want to be listening to as far as the politics and all of that creeping into sports? Because, realistically, Jay, it seems like sports have always been an escape from real life, right? I mean, that's kind of what people cling to, is the fact that it's kind of an escape, a getaway from the trials and tribulations of everything we're dealing with in everyday life. And now all of a sudden, all the problems and issues that, we're dealing with all the time have now crept into sports. And this poll seems to say that most folks don't want that, right?
Well, I mean, that's certainly true. And the response is to that contention is that, it's an escape for a lot of us. It's escape for those of us who were blessed to be born with, in certain circumstances, for those of us who happen to be of a certain skin color, a certain socioeconomic level. There are other people for whom sports is a way of expressing themselves, for whom they want to use what they have achieved as a platform to speak out. Now, I mean, it can be very unsettling, absolutely. If you're used to your entire life thinking about sports as just an escape, and all of a sudden you got somebody on here saying Black Lives Matter, that's going to come as a shock, to put it politely. But sports has always had that political component. It just hasn't been necessarily as outwardly obvious as people wearing shirts with those messages on them, or playing or taking knees during the anthem. So that's coming as a shock. What I do find interesting is that there were a strong number of people who were okay with the athletes speaking their messages. They just didn't want them happening during the game. That's a sharp departure from the way that it used to be, when people said, you know what, I don't want to hear what you have to say. You're just an athlete. I don't want to hear anything you have to say at all. But now it seems that people are more receptive to letting them speak, as long as it doesn't interfere with the game.
And Jay, we're seeing a lot of it, especially in the NBA. It looks like the NBA has kind of taken the lead as far as athletes making stands and using that platform to express their interest and desires to let people know how they feel about social injustice.
Yes. I mean, the NBA is obviously the most progressive of the sports leagues, obviously the WNBA even more so. And that was a condition. The NBA is a largely black populated league. The rosters are whatever the percentage is, 70% black, and And part of their condition for returning to play in the bubble was that they would have a social justice component attached to the return of the NBA, and they have the power to do that. NBA players have a lot more power than players in other leagues, and so that they made the decision that was how they wanted to use their platform and their power. So yes, obviously the NBA is a lot more outspoken than most other leagues on that.
That hasn't really reflected very well, though, in the ratings, has it?
Well, yes and no. It's tough to draw a direct connection, because, certainly there's a large number of people who are very vocally upset about it. And sure, I am certain that the ratings have had an impact on it, or it's had an impact on the ratings, I should say. But we're also playing NBA basketball at a time that it's not actually in NBA season. And moreover, there's a certain regularity to the sports calendar that is completely off kilter right now. And the NBA, their spin, again, you can agree or disagree with this, it's their perspective, is that their ratings are up in the demographics that matter. The 18 to 49 demographic, their ratings are actually up and increased. So they're not as worried about how much younger or older fans are watching, as long as that prize demographic is watching.
Jay, Rich is a big New York Jets fan. Do you have any words of encouragement for him today? They're off to a rough start. It could be another tough year for the Jets.
Dude, I'm a Falcons fan. I got nothing for you. I got nothing.
Yeah, we've already talked about the Falcons today. That was, oh my goodness. If you're a Falcons fan, you're hating life today.
Yeah, we can bond in misery. Absolutely.
Jay Busbee joining us here on the Sportsline from Yahoo Sports. I want to circle back to the poll here for just a second, because it was kind of interesting that folks are okay with athletes protesting, but just not during games. How do you read into that? Is that because that they don't have to pay attention to it? It doesn't affect the viewing of the games. What's the read on that?
I think that they are okay with them protesting as long as it's not during the games. And the interesting thing about that is that, with the exception of the NBA, which we already discussed, there's not a whole lot of protest involvement, or protest broadcast in the NFL games. There was almost none yesterday. And then in week one, I did an analysis of all of the pregame shows to see how much time they spent on social justice topics, and it was about 3% of the total time. So it's not like it's this long monologue about social justice, but certainly it's something that jars you so much that it jars you out of your normal routine of watching the NFL. And I can understand that, why that would upset people.
Jay Busbee joining us here on the Sportsline. Hey, one more on this, because we saw some backlash to the show of unity in the Chiefs game that opened the season. You remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And the question that I've heard time and time again is, when it comes to this show of unity and how could you boo unity, the question that's frequently raised is, wait a second, you added a new anthem, right? So it's not only the national anthem, but also the quote-unquote or the black national anthem, or the African-American national anthem, or whatever. And, folks are wondering, if you're creating a new national anthem, explain the unity there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the NFL.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just kind of saying that, you kind of see where some folks are coming from.
No, I absolutely understand. I absolutely understand. I mean, my whole thing is that in this entire issue, nobody's listening to anybody else. Everyone has their point of view on every side, and no one even entertains the other side and even says, hey, you know what? You might actually have a point. I understand why you might feel this is disrespectful. Hey, you know what? You might have a point. I understand why you feel like you don't get a fair shake from American society. Nobody listens to anybody else. It's just like, screw those players or screw those fans who don't agree with us. So, that's the difficult thing that we're in right now. And listening is not nearly as much fun as yelling, as we all know. So, but it's a tougher road for everyone to have to go down. And at the moment, there's very few people willing to go down that road.
Jay Busbee joining us here on the Sportsline. If you want to check out that article or any of the other stuff that he's done, check it out at Yahoo Sports, or you can visit him on social media at Jay Busbee on Twitter, JayBusbee. What do you got coming up next, Jay?
Just NFL here on out, man. Nonstop all the way through the end of the year.
Hey, Jay, let me ask you, what kind of chances do you give Bryson at the Masters?
Pretty good. I think that he's all right. He's he's in good shape there to cut those corners that Augusta deals with, and so yeah, I mean he won't have quite the same distance advantage that he did or the advantage out of the rough that he did at Winged Foot, but yeah, he'll certainly be one of the odds-on favorites.
One of the other interesting storylines was Patrick Reed, because I know you were talking about all the guys, Spieth and DJ and, all these guys who are kind of cut from the same cloth. Patrick Reed's certainly not that guy either. And, whether you like him, and the same thing with DeChambeau, right? Whether you like him or not, they're good for golf because they have people talking. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's what you want, is you want to see golf. You want to see players that move the needle more than just players who are just on the leaderboard.
Jay, thank you, man.
I do appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys.